The colony's alarm echoed faintly in the distance, but here, at the far end of Sector K-12, there was only silence. Elias Navarro wiped grease off his knuckles with the hem of his shirt. His calloused hands trembled, not from physical strain, but from memory. Since leaving the Earth fleet, he'd lived in total isolation. A rusted-out shipping container at the edge of a forgotten colony on Callisto, one of Jupiter's moons, had been his home for 7 years. Windows sealed with lead tape, all comm systems disabled, every detail carefully arranged to disappear from the map. He didn't want to save anyone anymore, but that night, as the sky trembled with violet lightning and plasma winds, a thunderous crash tore across the heavens. Elias stepped outside, cursing under his breath. He thought the generator had overloaded again. It wasn't the generator, it was a ship, or what was left of one. It had crashed less than 100 meters from his home. The ground was torn open in a long, deep trench. He hesitated. War instinct screamed, "Stay back." But something stronger pulled him forward, the same something that had once made him run into battle without thinking, a part of him that still wasn't dead. Amid the wreckage, he saw her. She didn't look human. Small, slender, skin tinted with a pearl-blue hue, eyes large and softly glowing, like water under moonlight. But there was fear in her gaze, human fear. Elias stopped, hands raised. She didn't speak, but she reached out. She was shaking, wounded. He looked around. If anyone saw this, if patrol units detected him harboring an unregistered life form, he'd be executed on the spot. No trial, no questions. He hesitated for 5 full seconds. Then he picked her up, wrapped her in his torn military jacket, and carried her home. Laid her gently on the makeshift bed in the corner. The generator was already beeping. Tracking interference had begun. Something was pinging her signature. 30 minutes later, the ships arrived. 3 of them, jet black, unmarked. Men stepped out in armored suits, pulse rifles drawn and scanning. One of them projected a hologram, her image. "We're tracking a dangerous biological asset," the officer said. "It escaped official transport. Seen anything unusual in the area?" Elias folded his arms. His jacket hung on the edge of the bed. The child was hidden beneath the floorboards, perfectly silent. Her energy signature was nearly undetectable. Nearly. "Haven't seen a thing," Elias replied. The soldier stepped forward without asking. Elias blocked the doorway. "You sure about that, sir?" the officer asked, scanning again. A faint blip lit up on the screen. Elias moved fast. He dropped the first man with a single punch to the jaw. The second reached for his weapon, but Elias twisted the barrel and used it to smash the third in the chest. Chaos erupted. Blood, cracking bones, shards of glass. Elias took 8 stab wounds, ribs, stomach, back. But even as he bled out, he didn't fall until he did. The floor met his knees. The world began to fade. But before the darkness fully took him, he saw something. The girl. She had crawled out from hiding. She knelt beside him, touched his chest, right where the blood poured out. And then she glowed. A stream of pure light, like liquid stardust, passed from her body into his, as if a tiny star had been transferred to his heart. And then blackness. He awoke hours later, blood crusted on the floor. The ships were gone, so were the soldiers. No bodies, no signs of a fight. The child was gone too. But outside his door, footprints not pressed into the soil, made of light. Glowing prints, stretching into the horizon. And the air vibrated, like something invisible was watching him, something that didn't breathe oxygen, something that now lived inside him. The glowing footprints vanished at the edge of the cliff. The soil beneath them wasn't burned, disturbed, or compressed. It was as if light itself had decided to step through his world and then fade, one step at a time. Elias Navarro stood there, staring into the grey-blue horizon of Callisto's frozen plains, wind biting through the seams of his jacket. His chest still throbbed where the child had touched him. He'd wrapped the stab wounds the best he could, but they weren't bleeding anymore. In fact, they looked closed, sealed, like they had never been there. Inside, something pulsed. He hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. He didn't know if this was a fever dream, a hallucination brought on by trauma, or the beginning of something far worse. But that morning, when the third sun rose, something knocked at his door. Not the pounding of patrols, a gentle knock, rhythmic, calm, almost polite. He grabbed the old sidearm from under his workbench and opened the door a crack. She stood there, tall, serene, pale silver skin and obsidian black eyes. Her hair flowed like mercury caught in a zero-gravity current. She wore no armor, no weapon, only a long cloak that shimmered as if woven from starlight. "I'm looking for my son," she said softly. Elias blinked. Her voice didn't hit his ears like normal sound. It arrived deeper, like it had already known him before it was spoken. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said automatically. She tilted her head. Then her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but recognition. "You're the one he chose," Elias tensed. "What the hell does that mean?" She stepped forward. The temperature around them dropped 10 degrees instantly. Lights inside his container dimmed and flickered. Her presence bent the world slightly out of shape, like gravity was unsure of her. Then Elias felt it, a burning sensation in his chest, right where the child had touched him. He staggered back, hand pressed to his ribs. When he pulled his shirt aside, the scar glowed faintly, like embers trapped beneath skin. She saw it. "He's inside you," she whispered. "His blood, his code, it merged with yours." "Who are you?" Elias asked, breathing heavily. She looked at him, eyes unreadable. "I am Lyra Valen, first sovereign of the Elithar system, and the child you saved is my heir." Silence. Elias stared at her, processing every word. He thought of the child's face, the glow in her eyes, the softness of her hand, the way she trembled like any frightened kid. That kid was a prince. "Not a prince," Lyra corrected. "The prince, the last born of our bloodline, and the only one who can unite our system." Elias felt the weight of it all crush into him like a collapsing star. He opened the door fully and let her in. The next few days passed in a blur. Lyra didn't eat, didn't sleep. She stood outside most nights, watching the stars. Occasionally, Elias would find her whispering into a small orb-like device, her voice layered with tones that didn't belong in human vocal cords. She told him pieces of the truth, never all at once. The Elithar people had been on the brink of extinction for decades, not by nature, not by time, but by war. A war the humans started. Elias listened in silence as she told him that he had been there years ago when the Earth fleet glassed the skies of Elithar Prime. He remembered that operation. He was just a soldier, a trigger puller. The brief said the target was a rebel base, non-compliant species refusing alliance terms. It was a lie. It had been the royal nursery, where Lyra's child was supposed to be safe. Only a few made it out alive, including her and the boy. But someone in the Earth fleet had tracked them, bribed officials, sabotaged transports. And just weeks ago, the ship carrying the prince was targeted again and shot down by humans. Elias tried to justify it. "I didn't know what we were doing. I was following orders." Lyra didn't flinch. "None of you knew. That was the point." They sat in silence. Then she reached out. Her hand gently brushed the glowing mark on his chest. "You didn't know, but you bled for him. You fought your own to protect him. The universe saw that. I saw that." He felt something shift, Not in the room, not in her, in him, a fracture opening, something between guilt and hope. That night, as they stood outside looking up at the faint blue star where Elithar Prime once orbited, Elias said what he hadn't dared until then. "I want to help." Lyra looked at him, "Then find him with me." They left the colony the next morning. Elias brought only what he needed, his sidearm, a single ration pack, and the photo of his sister, the last person he'd lost in the war. As they flew across the icy plains, the stars above shimmered like whispers in the dark. Then, just past the ridge near Sector K-17, a signal jammed their nav system. Elias looked up, 19 ships, metallic and jagged, hovering silently, descending. Their symbols were not human, but they were not Elithar either. Lyra froze. They found him. "Who?" "My people," she whispered. "But not to protect him." She turned to Elias. "They came to erase the bloodline and kill anyone who knows." And then she added, her voice like breaking glass, "They don't know he chose you, that your body now holds the code." The stars went dark as the ships activated stealth drive, and Elias realized the war he thought he escaped had just followed him home. The ships hovered in a silent formation, like predators circling prey. No warning, no weapons drawn. Not yet. Elias stood next to Lyra on the frozen cliffside, heart pounding like a war drum. He'd seen military operations before. This wasn't one. It was an execution squad. "They're not here to negotiate," he said quietly. Lyra didn't respond at first. Her gaze locked on the lead ship, a silver triangular dreadnought with a violet insignia burned into its hull. The royal seal of Elithar. Elias recognized it from the datapad she showed him earlier. Only one faction in the Elitharian system still used that mark, the Royal Guard. The very group that once protected her throne, now turning their blades inward. "They've declared the bloodline broken," she said at last. "The boy's survival threatens the power they seized. If they find him with you, they won't just kill you. They'll destroy everything your DNA has touched." "So they're like us," Elias muttered. "Kill the past to protect the lie." Lyra turned to him. "They're worse. They know the truth, and they chose to erase it." A sudden pulse of energy rippled through the sky. The lead ship opened a channel. A voice echoed across the landscape, deep and distorted, not through speakers, directly into their minds. "Lyra Valen, you are ordered to stand down. Hand over the off-worlder and the code. This is your only warning." Elias's jaw clenched. "How do they know it's in me?" "They don't. Not yet," Lyra said. "But they suspect. The mark on your chest. It's not just a scar, it's a beacon." Suddenly, her hand moved to the side of his neck. He flinched. "Hold still," she whispered. Her fingertips glowed as they brushed across his skin, leaving behind a faint trail of iridescent light. It burned, but not painfully, like the warmth of a memory being etched into flesh. "What are you doing?" "Masking your genetic signature," she said. "If they scan you now, they'll see only human. Will it fool them?" For a while, a second pulse rang out, 30 seconds to compliance. Elias looked at her. "You really think they'll wait 30 seconds? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her cloak and pulled out a small black device, oval like a smooth stone. She handed it to him. "If anything happens to me, use this. It'll lead you to him." Elias stared at it. "No. We're not doing the if I die speech. You said we'd find him together." "I meant it," she said softly, "but you need to be ready." Another voice suddenly rang out, this time not from the ships, from behind them. "Step away from her, sir." Elias turned sharply. A human patrol unit, 5 soldiers, Earth fleet, guns raised. The lead soldier's voice cracked through the cold. "We received a report of alien activity. You're trespassing on restricted territory. Lyra stayed motionless. Elias didn't. He stepped forward, arms half raised. "This is a mistake. We're not—" "Shut up," the soldier snapped. "You're Elias Navarro. You were declared KIA 7 years ago. So either you faked your death, or someone's gonna get promoted for finding you alive." Elias glanced at Lyra. Her eyes flicked to the sky. The ships were lowering. Both sides were closing in. "Stand down," the Earth soldier repeated. "Now!" Then, all at once, everything collapsed. A massive beam of violet energy burst from the lead Eleutherian ship and vaporized the entire human patrol in one strike. No hesitation. Ash and static filled the air. Elias dropped to his knees, ears ringing. "Holy shh!" "They made the first move," Lyra said. "Yeah," Elias growled, grabbing his sidearm, "and we're about to be the last target." She looked at him, and for the first time since she arrived, she smiled. Not a soft smile, a deadly one. "Good," she said, "because I didn't come here to run." The next few minutes were a blur of chaos and heat. They fled through the ravines behind the colony ruins, chased by hybrid drones sent from the Eleutherian ships. Each drone moved like a wasp made of metal and shadow, scanning the terrain, hunting their breath. Elias led the way. This was familiar territory, terrain he'd walked for years, but Lyra moved like she belonged to gravity itself, never stumbling, never tiring. One of the drones caught them in a clearing. It fired a blast toward Elias. He dove, hit the ground, and for a second the pain in his chest flared again, not from the impact, from within. As the drone moved in, ready to fire again, Lyra stepped in front of him. But before the shot landed, Elias's hand lit up. Not by choice. A blast of white energy erupted from his palm, blowing the drone into shards. He stared at his hand in disbelief. "I didn't mean to—" "You're evolving," Lyra said. "His code is adapting you. You're no longer just human." He looked at her, stunned, but she was already moving. "We have to find him, before they do." That night, they found shelter in the caverns beneath the ice crust. It was quiet, cold, safe, for now. They sat near a small heater. Elias finally let himself breathe. "You knew," he said. "Knew what?" "That I'd changed. That I wasn't just carrying the code. That it was changing me." Lyra nodded. "I knew the moment I saw the glow in your scar. It's not just a bond, it's a transfer. His essence, his biology, it chose you." He looked into her eyes. "I don't understand why." She leaned closer, voice low. "Because when the moment came, and the world told you to run, you didn't. You bled for him. You broke your oath, your exile, for a child that wasn't even yours." Elias felt something crack inside. "You don't even know who I used to be." "I know exactly who you are," she whispered. "You were the enemy who destroyed my world, and now you are the man who might save what's left of it." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she reached out and placed her hand on his. Her touch was cold, his hand, still glowing faintly. They didn't say the word for what this was. They didn't have to, because whatever line separated them, human and Eleuthar, soldier and queen, it had already begun to dissolve. But above them, in the night sky, 20 more ships crossed into the system, and in the heart of one of them, the child opened his eyes. The child's eyes were open, not wide with fear, not teary like the last time Elias had seen them, but calm, alert, and glowing with a new intensity that pulsed with every second, as if his gaze beat like a second heart. He sat alone in a containment chamber, floating in zero gravity, surrounded by streams of light and metallic neural vines that connected his limbs to the walls of the ship. Monitors scanned him constantly, measuring things no human language had words for, not just vitals, but frequencies, resonances, genetic harmonics. Outside the chamber, 3 high-ranking Eleutherian guards observed him from behind a reinforced shield. "He's stabilizing," one said in their native tongue, a dialect that sounded like wind through glass. The eldest, a tall male in obsidian armor, didn't blink. "He's connecting to something. Or someone. He shouldn't be able to. We severed his link to the source." He wasn't using the source. The room fell silent. Then, without warning, the child spoke. His voice carried through the metal, bypassing the speakers, bypassing the guards' suits, bypassing sound itself. "He's coming." They all froze. The boy's voice was soft, but full of certainty. The elder stepped forward. "Who's coming?" The child tilted his head, and for the briefest second he smiled. "My father." The guards exchanged alarmed looks. "That's not possible," one whispered. "There was no genetic bond." "He's not speaking metaphorically," the elder growled. "The transfer, the imprint, he chose the human." And in that moment, panic spread through the command deck, because the blood of Elithar's final heir wasn't just alive. It was protecting someone who was never supposed to exist. Meanwhile, deep beneath Callisto's crust, Elias jolted awake, not from a sound, but from a feeling. A sharp pulse ran through his chest, like a drumbeat, synced to something miles away. He sat up, breath ragged. His shirt was soaked with sweat even in the freezing cave. The mark on his chest was glowing again, brighter now, as if reacting to a signal he couldn't hear. Lyra watched from the other side of the cave. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She'd felt it too. "He's alive," Elias whispered. Lyra stood. "And he's reaching out to you." Elias looked at his trembling hands. "How is that even possible?" "The Elithar bond isn't just genetic," she said. "It's energetic, emotional. He trusted you in the moment before death. That trust, it created a living tether. His mind, even under sedation or control, is still linked to you." Elias stood, pacing. "Okay, then where is he? Can we trace it?" Lyra nodded and activated the black device she had given him days earlier, the small, smooth oval. She placed it on the ground and whispered something in her native tongue. It unfolded into a 3D holographic map of the moon. A red signal pulsed slowly, moving. Then suddenly it jumped across sectors. Then again. "Damn it!" she hissed. "They're running warp hops through subsurface jump corridors. They're trying to keep him mobile, so we can't lock onto him." Elias stared at the display. "Can we still intercept?" She hesitated. "There's one place he can't be moved from. The vault." "What's the vault?" "A site beneath the northern ice cap. It's where the Royal Guard initiates full code extractions." Elias froze. "Extractions?" She nodded grimly. "If they believe the child's bloodline is compromised, if they fear what you and he have become, they'll extract his genome, burn the body, and resequence the heir from scratch. They'll erase him." Elias's jaw tightened. "How do we get there?" 12 hours later, they approached the vault perimeter aboard a stolen mining skiff, hiding their energy signature beneath the natural magnetic fields of Callisto's poles. The journey was cold, silent, and slow. Lyra refused to use any technology that could be detected. Elias spent the ride staring out the viewport, not at the stars, at himself, at his reflection. The eyes looking back weren't the same ones he remembered from the war. There was something else now, something not quite human. He caught Lyra watching him. "You regret saving him?" she asked. "No," he said. "I regret not doing it sooner." She nodded, then said something he didn't expect. "He sees you as family now. You know that, don't you? I'm not his blood. Neither am I. His mother died during the Exodus. I became her. I had to. For him. For our people." Elias turned toward her, surprised. "Then who are you really?" Her eyes, for once, softened. I was a scientist, not a queen. I became one the day I stopped believing survival was enough." He looked away. "Maybe we both became something we weren't supposed to be." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, we became what the child needed." As they approached the vault, the ice below cracked open like a wound. The vault wasn't just a building, it was a machine, half buried in the planet, spinning with rings of metal and light. Around it, dozens of ships floated in formation. Guard towers hummed with sentry drones. No alarms, no movement. "They're waiting," Elias said. "For us," Lyra confirmed. "They knew we'd come." "No," she said. "They hoped we wouldn't." A moment of silence passed. Then Elias holstered his sidearm. "Well," he said, "let's go disappoint them." They moved fast. Lyra used old override codes to breach the first shield. Elias took down 2 sentries with precise, silenced shots. The further they moved into the vault's interior, the more surreal the structure became. Walls alive with data streams, doors made of shifting energy, hallways that rearranged themselves. At the central chamber, they finally saw him. The child, suspended in a chamber of liquid stasis, eyes open, a faint light surrounding his body like a cocoon. The moment Elias entered the room, the glow intensified. "He senses you," Lyra whispered. But before Elias could move forward, a voice echoed from above. "You took what wasn't yours." They turned. From the shadows emerged Commander Vektal, the highest-ranking royal guard still alive. Elias raised his weapon. "He came to me. I didn't take anything." Vek stepped forward, eyes burning. "You altered the air, corrupted him with human DNA. That child is no longer pure. He is a threat to our entire legacy." "He's a child," Elias growled. "Not a damn bloodline." Lyra stepped beside him. "If you harm him, you'll what?" Vek sneered. "Bleed for another human mistake?" Elias fired first, but Vek was faster. The blast hit Elias square in the chest. He flew backward into the wall, gasping. The mark on his chest flared violently, and something inside woke up. Elias's body lit with white-blue energy, cracks of light racing down his arms. The child inside the chamber mirrored the effect, their pulses syncing, glowing in unison. Vek's eyes widened. "No!" Too late. Elias stood, not fully human anymore, not Elithar, something new. And as his feet lifted off the ground, hovering with energy, Lyra whispered one word under her breath. "Ascension." The air inside the vault was electric, literally. Lights flickered, metal trembled. Every surface, every wall, every panel seemed to pull away from Elias, as if the building itself recognized what was happening. Elias Navarro was no longer just human. He hovered 2 feet above the metallic floor, arms outstretched, his veins glowing like rivers of white fire beneath his skin. The mark on his chest, once a subtle scar, had expanded into a luminous symbol, ancient, Elitharian, and alive. Across the room, Commander Vektal stumbled back, his weapon lowered but his fear rising. "This shouldn't be possible," he whispered. "You're not one of us." Elias spoke, but his voice was different. It echoed, layered, doubled, as if something else was speaking through him. "I didn't choose this. He did." Vek turned toward the child still suspended in the stasis chamber. The boy's eyes were glowing now too, locked on Elias. Their pulses remained perfectly synchronized. "He's channeling through you," Lyra said, her voice full of awe. "The air isn't just bonded to you, he's awakening through you." Commander Vek snapped out of his shock. His face hardened. "It doesn't matter. He's corrupted. You both are." He raised his weapon again and shouted, "Initiate cleansing protocol. Burn them both." Suddenly, panels in the ceiling snapped open. Dozens of drones descended, sleek, black machines armed with plasma rounds and atomic disruptors. Their lenses locked on Elias and the chamber holding the child. The vault prepared to execute its final command. Elias dropped to the ground, his boots hitting the floor with weight and purpose. He looked at Lyra. "Can you disable the chamber?" She nodded. "But it will take time." He didn't hesitate. "Then buy yourself time." Elias turned to face the drones as they began to fire. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a storm. Elias moved like a ghost wrapped in light. Bullets of energy curved around him, slowed, then redirected, back into the drones that fired them. He wasn't dodging the attacks. He was commanding them. Each motion of his hands sent arcs of power into the machines. Some exploded in midair, others simply fell, power cells drained as if life itself had been ripped out. Vec watched in horror. "He's using source manipulation. That's impossible. He's not Elithar." But Lyra wasn't watching the battle. She was at the chamber now, fingers moving quickly through layers of hard light controls, bypassing biometric locks with Elitharian phrases and code pulses. "Come on," she muttered. "Stay with me, little star." Inside the chamber, the boy's breath began to quicken. He wasn't asleep anymore. He was waking up. Elias slammed a final drone into the wall with a flick of his hand. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Smoke curled into the air. Then the vault trembled. Not from combat, but from above. Lyra's eyes widened. "They're bringing down the dreadnought." Elias turned to her. "To destroy the vault? To destroy us." High above the icy surface, a massive Elitharian dreadnought was descending. It carried a planetary disintegration weapon, a last resort, a weapon Lyra herself had designed during the early days of the war. "Once it locks on, it'll vaporize the entire region," she said. "Nothing survives that." "How long do we have?" Elias asked. She looked at the rising energy signature on her device. 5 minutes, maybe less. He stepped forward, eyes still glowing. "Then we finish this now." The stasis chamber opened with a hiss. The child floated down slowly, glowing softly, his skin now faintly mirroring Elias's, as if their energies had merged. His eyes met Elias's. No words were spoken, but something passed between them. Recognition. Connection. Family. Lyra knelt before the child. "Can you walk?" The boy nodded. "Good, because you're not going to run." A violent quake shook the vault. "They're charging the weapon," Elias said. "We need a way out." Lyra hesitated. "There's an emergency evac corridor, but it only leads upward, to the surface. Not far enough." She looked at the child. "Can you do it?" The boy nodded again, but this time his hands lifted. The air shifted. And a door opened, not in the wall, not in the floor, but in space itself, a shimmering fracture in the room, like the surface of water catching starlight. A portal. Elias stared. "What is that?" "A pocket corridor," Lyra said in disbelief. "That's Elithar royal tech. We thought it was lost." The child looked at Elias and smiled. "He remembered," Lyra whispered. "He kept it hidden until now." They turned to enter, but behind them, Commander Vectal was not done. He stood, bloodied, weaponless, but holding something worse, a disruptor grenade. He hurled it at the portal. Elias turned, too late. The explosion cracked the chamber in two. Elias was thrown forward, landing hard. The portal flickered, unstable. The boy screamed. Lyra caught him, shielding his body. Vec stood in the smoke, coughing, laughing. "You think this ends with love and light," he spat. "You're an abomination." "Both of you." Elias stood, body glowing hotter than ever. He stepped into the smoke. "You're right." He raised his hand. "And I'm done apologizing for it." A shockwave burst from Elias's body. It ripped through the air, collapsing walls and melting panels. Vectal vaporized in an instant, nothing left but scorched air. The portal stabilized again. Lyra turned to Elias. "We have to go, now." But Elias looked up at the ceiling. The dreadnought's weapon was seconds away from firing. He looked at the child, at Lyra, then at the portal, and he knew. "I'll hold it off." "No!" Lyra grabbed his arm. "There's another way. There has to be." "There's not," Elias said calmly. "But it's okay. You've got him now." The child reached for him. Elias knelt, pressing his forehead to the boy's. "I'm proud of you. Always remember that." Then he stood and smiled at Lyra. "You saved me too. I just didn't know it until now." Lyra's voice cracked. "Don't please." But Elias stepped back, glowing, transcendent. The vault shook one last time, and as the dreadnought fired, Elias Navarro lifted into the air, arms outstretched, and released everything he had, a blinding wave of light, a scream through time, and then silence. There was no sound, no light, just emptiness. For one eternal moment, the universe stood still, like it was holding its breath. And then the light came back, but not from the dreadnought's weapon, from him, where Elias Navarro had stood, at the heart of the vault. Now remained only a single sphere of radiant energy, floating, pulsing, alive. It expanded, consuming the deadly beam, descending from the Eleutherian warship like a sponge absorbing flame. The weapon's core detonated prematurely in the sky, sending a ripple through the atmosphere, but it never reached the surface. Instead, the light from Elias's body radiated upward, forming a dome of pure energy that blocked the blast and sent shards of fire scattering across the moonscape. In the distance, the surviving Eleutherian fleet turned and fled. Back aboard the dreadnought, what remained of the Royal Guard scrambled to make sense of what they'd just witnessed. Their senses were blind, communications dead. Every attempt to analyze the energy signature left systems fried and unreadable. One commander stared at the glowing mass on the surface of Callisto and whispered, "He didn't die." "No," another said, "he ascended." Far below, in a hidden cavern at the base of the vault, the portal hummed softly. Lyra and the boy had made it through. Barely. The passage had collapsed behind them the moment they crossed. Now they were alone in the dark. The emergency exit to the portal room sealed under meters of frozen rock and metal. The boy, still silent, sat curled next to her, his eyes wide, glowing faintly. He didn't cry, he didn't speak, but Lyra could feel it. He knew. Elias was gone, or at least changed. She knelt in front of him, brushing the hair from his forehead. "He did it to protect you," she said gently, "to protect us both." The boy looked up. His voice, when it came, was no longer childlike. "He still is." Lyra froze. "What did you say?" The boy placed a hand over his chest. His small fingers glowed, not white like Elias, but something new, a brilliant blue-gold shimmer, the same color as the vault's command seal. "He's not gone," the child said again. "He's in the light now." Lyra felt something twist inside her, something between grief and awe. She turned her face away, her hands trembled. "I should have stopped him. I should have—" "He chose it," the child said, "like he chose me, like I choose you." Lyra looked at him. His words weren't just echoes. They were royal decrees. The boy wasn't just repeating what he felt. He was awakening. In the days that followed, word of the Vault incident spread like wildfire. The Eleutherian Empire, now fractured and leaderless, descended into internal chaos. Multiple factions emerged, some calling for vengeance, others for peace. Some claimed Elias was a weapon created by humans. Others believed he was a long-awaited messiah, foretold in the old data crystals. On Earth, High Command issued an immediate blackout. All communications regarding Callisto were blocked. Surveillance was rerouted. The surviving patrol units who witnessed the child or Elias were relocated. Whispers spread through back channels. A soldier who died in the war had reappeared, fused with alien DNA, possessing technology that shouldn't exist. A man who bled for a child not his own, and became something the universe couldn't categorize. Meanwhile, Lyra and the boy lived in the shadows. They moved from system to system, protected by old allies, traders, refugees, anyone who still believed in the Eleutherian bloodline. But Lyra knew they couldn't run forever. They needed a new strategy, a new path. So she began preparing the child for something she had once sworn never to do again, claim the throne, but this time not as a weapon, not as a ruler of war, as a symbol of union. The humans had taken too much. The Eleuthar had fallen too far. Only something, or someone, that bridged both worlds could lead what was left. And the child was both. One night, years after the vault, in a quiet spaceport on the edge of the Scorian belt, the boy, now a young teenager, stood on the roof of their hideout, staring at the stars. He didn't say much anymore. He didn't have to. Lyra approached and sat beside him. "You've been quiet lately." He nodded. "He's calling." Lyra's breath caught. "You hear him? He's not far. Not exactly near either. But I feel him. Sometimes I dream of him." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "What do you see?" He closed his eyes. "A place of light, like a sky made of glass. He doesn't speak, but I know he's watching, waiting." "For what?" The boy opened his eyes again. "For the time I'll need him." Lyra studied his face, older now, sharper but still kind. "Do you know who you are yet?" she asked. He nodded. "I'm the last heir of Eleuthar." "Is that all?" He shook his head. "I'm also his son." And in the silence that followed, far across the galaxy, something stirred in the stars. A ripple, a whisper, a fragment of voice. "When the time comes, I'll find you." The rebellion didn't begin with a battle. It began with a voice, a transmission, anonymous and brief, broadcast across the outer colonies of the Eleutherian system and picked up by fringe human outposts alike. A scrambled message, distorted by interference, but unmistakably powerful. "He bled for us. They burned him for it. Now we rise, not as Eleuthar, not as human, but as what comes next." No signature, no origin, but everyone who heard it felt something, because they knew who the message was about and who it came from. Lyra Valen listened to the broadcast from the hidden resistance cell beneath the ruins of Carthage, an ancient Eleutherian city once buried under crystal and snow. Now only wreckage remained, but under it survivors had built a base, a growing network of rebels who believed the empire could be reborn, not as it was, but as it should have been. The boy, now 17 years old, no longer a child, stood beside her, cloaked, hood drawn low over his glowing eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The others in the chamber bowed the moment he entered, some in reverence, others in guilt, and a few in fear, because rumors had spread that he carried something ancient inside him, that the last time someone fired a weapon at him, it stopped mid-air and shattered like glass before touching his skin, that his blood could power an entire station for 100 cycles, that he could speak to the stars, and most disturbing of all, that he was not alone in his mind anymore, that someone else watched through him. Lyra stepped forward and addressed the council. The royal guard fractured after Callisto, but they didn't vanish. They're rebuilding under a new name, the Aegis Protocol. They're gathering across the Gamma sectors, training, recruiting, planning an offensive against any system that speaks the heir's name. A tall rebel leader with deep scars leaned forward. "What proof do we have that they're armed?" Lyra didn't answer. Instead, the boy stepped into the center of the room. He lifted one hand, and without a word, projected a memory into the air, a hologram pulled from a soldier's dying mind days ago. The image flickered, then stabilized. A massive hangar, thousands of black-armored troops, warships bearing the new Aegis insignia, a fractured version of the old Eleutherian seal, reshaped into a spear through a planet. At the front, a face appeared, Vectal, alive, rebuilt with synthetic implants. "Commander Vec is not only alive," the boy said calmly, his voice deeper now, steady. "He's planning to wipe every neutral system that offered us refuge. Their fleet departs in 6 days." Murmurs exploded in the room. "How did you... Who told you? Where did this memory come from?" The boy looked around the chamber. "I didn't see it," he said. "He did." The room went silent. Lyra closed her eyes. She knew what was coming. One of the generals stood. "You mean the human, Elias Navarro? He's still alive?" The boy turned to him slowly. "No." Pause. "He's beyond alive." Across the galaxy, in the uncharted void between systems, strange anomalies began to surface. Unmanned scout ships reported glowing figures floating in the vacuum, humanoid silhouettes burning with soft white-blue light. Long-range sensors picked up fragments of voice transmissions that couldn't be traced. Sometimes just a whisper, "I'm still here." Other times, full sentences, "You will not harm him. I remember the war. You don't need to fear me, but you should fear what made me." Some systems dismissed it as background radiation. Others called it a myth, but the rebellion called it proof. Elias Navarro was not dead. He was somewhere between matter and memory, anchored by a living tether, the boy. And the closer the boy came to confronting his destiny, the closer Elias came to returning. 2 days before the Aegis fleet's launch, Lyra stood with the boy on a quiet ridge above the underground base. Stars spread across the sky like endless possibilities. "You ready?" she asked. He nodded. "They won't expect us to strike first. They expect you to run." "I've done enough running." Lyra hesitated, then said softly, "There's something I never told you." He turned. "I was afraid of what you'd become." He didn't flinch. "And now, I'm afraid of what you'll have to give up." He studied her face. "I'm not giving up anything. But if he returns, if Elias comes back fully, you'll be connected forever. Part of him will live inside you, always." "I know. And you're okay with that?" The boy smiled, small, sad, resolute. "I'm not trying to be him," he said. "I'm trying to be what he believed I could be." Lyra reached out and touched his shoulder. "You already are." That night, in a quiet moment alone, the boy closed his eyes and reached out with his thoughts, not into space, into the light. And something answered. Not a voice this time, but a memory. His first night in Elias's arms, the heat of the fire, the human heartbeat, the safety he'd never known before. A whisper in his mind, if love can cross galaxies, then nothing is ever truly lost. And then, a rush of warmth, like an arm wrapping around his soul, like a father saying, "I've got you." He opened his eyes and knew Elias Navarro was coming back, not as a man, not as a ghost, but as a force. One the galaxy wasn't ready for. The countdown had begun. Across the Gamma sectors, the Aegis protocol fleet assembled in perfect silence, a storm waiting for permission to strike. 43 warships, 2 dreadnoughts, thousands of soldiers bred for loyalty, conditioned for obedience, all awaiting the signal from one man, Vec Tal. Once the commander of the Royal Guard, now something else entirely. More metal than flesh, reconstructed with stolen tech, driven not by duty, but by revenge. And yet, behind his synthetic eyes, burned a fear he refused to speak aloud, a name, Elias Navarro, because deep down, Vec knew He hadn't destroyed him. He had released him. In a hidden hangar on the icy moon of Keris, the rebellion was preparing for something bold, a direct preemptive strike against the Aegis fleet before it could wipe out the neutral systems. It was suicide, but it was the only chance they had. Lyra stood before the rebel pilots, laying out the attack vectors, system vulnerabilities, and the phase shields they'd need to bypass. The boy, now a full-grown heir, cloaked in a black and gold suit, laced with Eleutherian light metal, stood at her side, silent and still. He no longer looked like a child, but he didn't look entirely like a man either. There was something eternal in his eyes now, something not of one world, but both. Lyra turned to him. "You sure you want to be on the front line?" He nodded. "They're not afraid of ships or weapons. They're afraid of me." "Then make them afraid," she said. And he did. The battle began just outside the orbit of Drayan V, a neutral planet on the edge of the system. The rebels arrived first, 6 ships, small and fast, hiding behind the planet's gravity well. The Aegis fleet detected them within minutes, but didn't engage immediately. They were waiting for him. The boy stepped onto the deck of the rebel flagship, walked to the front viewport, and removed his mask. The moment his face was exposed to space, something awakened. In the distance, the Aegis dreadnought shuddered. On its command bridge, Vectal clenched his fists as warning lights flared across his interface. "What is that energy signature?" one officer asked. Vec didn't answer, because he recognized it. The readings weren't just Eleutherian, they weren't just human. They were something new, a living resonance, a biofrequency that didn't belong to any database or known classification. The readings labeled it with a simple code, Alpha 1, uncatalogued force entity. On the rebel ship, the boy closed his eyes and reached, not outward, upward, into the light, and somewhere, beyond the stars. Elias Navarro answered. It didn't come as a vision, not as a voice. It came as a presence. Suddenly, all rebel systems lit up. Power levels surged, weapon systems stabilized, even damaged circuits began self-repairing. The engineers scrambled. "What the hell is happening?" Lyra whispered the truth. "He's here." And then Elias Navarro returned, but not in a ship, not in a body, in the light. He descended like a comet, pure energy crashing through the clouds of Drayan V's atmosphere, taking shape just above the battlefield. First, a silhouette, then a body, not human, not alien, a fusion. The glow faded just enough to reveal a figure floating in the sky, tall, radiant, eyes of liquid starlight. His body was marked with Eleutherian runes, but his face was Elias, whole, alive, transcendent. The rebel comms went silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Then the boy stepped to the edge of the deck and whispered, "Father." And Elias answered, "I'm here." Panic spread through the Aegis fleet. Some ships turned back immediately. Others hesitated, awaiting orders. But on the bridge of the dreadnought, Vectal did not blink. He stood, walked to the front of the command bay, and activated full combat protocols. "Target him," he ordered. "Full payload. No hesitation." "But, Commander," his officer said, "we don't even know what he is." "That's exactly why we destroy him now." The weapons fired. Missiles, particle cannons, graviton warheads. The sky turned black with fire. But Elias didn't move. He didn't block. He didn't dodge. He simply raised his hand, and the weapons stopped mid-air, hundreds of meters away, suspended like frozen dust. Then they crumpled. Each warhead twisted, collapsed, and imploded into itself, vanishing as if they had never existed. The dreadnought's bridge filled with alarms. "Sir, he's rewriting matter," a technician shouted. "He's folding physics. He's..." He's... But they never finished the sentence, because Elias looked at them, and the entire ship shuddered, not from an explosion, from fear. On the rebel ship, Lyra watched with awe. The boy stepped forward, face unreadable. "He's not just fighting back," he said. "He's warning them." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "How far will he go?" The boy turned to her, slowly. "That depends." "On what?" "On what they do next." Back aboard the Aegis dreadnought, Vectal was losing control. Officers were defecting. Systems were failing. The dreadnought's weapons had gone cold, but he had one last contingency. Deep beneath the command deck, locked in a cryogenic vault, lay a prototype device developed during the earliest days of Eleutherian warfare, the Soul Severance Core, a weapon designed to strip the consciousness from any being, physical or not. Vec activated the override. "This ends now," he growled. The weapon began charging. Lyra's sensors picked it up immediately. She turned to the boy. "They're going to use a soul core on him. It'll destroy everything he's become, everything he is." The boy didn't flinch. He stepped off the deck, into open space, and in a flash of golden light, joined his father. Elias turned to him, not as a being of light, not as a weapon, but as a father, and the boy nodded. Together, they moved, two stars dancing through darkness. They crossed the void in seconds, reached the dreadnought, and descended. Straight through the hull. What happened inside that ship was never fully recorded, but those who survived said the light didn't burn. It revealed that Elias Navarro didn't kill anyone. He simply showed them what they were, every lie, every act, every consequence. Some officers fell to their knees in shame, others dropped their weapons in tears, and a few, those too far gone, simply vanished, consumed by the very void they created. At the heart of the dreadnought, the soul core flickered and then stopped, frozen, neutralized. By the boy, he raised his hand and said only two words, "No more." And the war ended. The battle never became a war, because it never had to. Because when Elias and the boy returned from the dreadnought, there was nothing left to fight, only those who were ready to follow, and a galaxy that suddenly remembered hope was a force too. 3 days after the sky stopped burning, the galaxy held its breath, not from fear, from uncertainty, because for the first time in over 2 decades, there were no invasions, no retaliation strikes, no propaganda broadcasts, just silence. And in that silence, a question lingered on every world. What happens now? The Aegis fleet had not been destroyed. It had been disarmed, its dreadnoughts, its warships, its soldiers, all still intact, but every weapon had gone dark. Every command system wiped, not by hacking, not by force, by something higher, and in the center of it all stood 2 figures, floating, glowing, silent, Elias Navarro and the boy he once carried from the wreckage. Now no longer a boy, now something else entirely. They called him many things in the days that followed. The new sovereign, the starborn, the child who chose a human over a throne. But to the ones who knew him best, he was still just Callan. Lyra watched from the balcony of the Eleutherian Hall of Echoes, recently restored from ruins. Below, tens of thousands of citizens, humans and Elithar alike, gathered to witness something no one believed would ever happen again. A coronation, not of a ruler, of a bridge. Callan stood at the top of the marble steps, dressed not in robes or armor, but in a simple suit of woven light. His eyes scanned the crowd, and for a moment he seemed almost uncertain. "Do you want to say something?" Lyra asked quietly behind him. He looked back. "I don't know what to say." "You could start with the truth." Callan smiled faintly, then stepped forward. No podium, no speeches, just his voice, amplified not by tech, but by energy, the same energy that once lit a soldier's chest on a distant moon. "I was born of one world, saved by another, and shaped by both. I don't stand here as your king, I stand here as your mirror. If you still believe in walls, I'm your threat, but if you believe in bridges, I'm your future. The crowd didn't erupt. They didn't cheer. They simply stood. And then, one by one, they knelt. Not out of submission, out of respect, out of hope, because in his voice they had all heard something familiar, something human, something Elithar, something new. That night, the stars were clearer than anyone remembered. No ships, no pollution. Just silence above and below. Callan sat at the edge of the gardens, away from the crowds and the celebrations. Lyra approached quietly. "You disappeared. Needed quiet," he said. She sat beside him. He looked at her with a strange sadness in his eyes. "They want me to lead a new system, rewrite the laws, rebuild the alliances, negotiate with Earth. But you didn't ask for any of this." "No," he whispered. "I asked for him." The silence stretched between them. Then Callan closed his eyes and whispered into the stars, "You said you'd find me when the time came." And the stars answered. A flicker of light, barely visible, hovered above the garden, then another and another, until a soft constellation of glowing particles circled around him, forming the outline of a figure. Elias, not in body, but in presence. Callan didn't cry. He smiled, because he finally understood. Elias Navarro wasn't gone. He had become what the boy needed most, not a man, a guardian, a constant, a presence in the code of the universe itself. Lyra saw the light too. She stepped back, gave them space, and for a moment that stretched beyond time, father and son were reunited, not in flesh but in purpose. Elias's voice came not through ears, but through memory, deeper than language. "You don't need me to lead. You just need to remember why you're here. You are not the product of war. You are the proof that love creates more than fear ever could." Callan nodded and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." The light pulsed once, then faded, returning to the stars. But Callan was not alone, not anymore, because from that day on, every time he closed his eyes, he felt it, the heartbeat of the man who once bled for him. The next morning, Lyra entered the newly rebuilt hall to find Callan standing at the command table, surrounded by envoys. Not Elithar, not Earth, but both, negotiating, listening, leading. He turned to her as she entered. "We're building a new interstellar council," he said. "No more empires, no more factions, equal voices from every system." She smiled. "And the name?" He looked out the window toward the stars and said, "The Bridge Accord." Back on Earth, most citizens never learned the full truth. The military scrubbed the files. The politicians buried the reports. But some knew. A child who wasn't human. A soldier who chose to protect instead of destroy. A bond so powerful it rewrote physics. And in underground networks, in rebel books, in secret classrooms, they passed the legend down. Not as a story of war, but as the truth behind a single phrase: he bled for a child not his own and became something no one could control. And somewhere, far beyond what scanners could reach, in the folds between stars and silence, a flicker of white-blue light drifted through the void, watching, protecting, waiting, because when the time comes again, Elias Navarro will answer. Time passed, not in years, in cycles, in choices, in echoes. The galaxy had changed, not because of destruction, but because someone chose not to destroy. Because one man, broken by war, chose to save a life instead of ending one. That choice rippled outward and reshaped everything. Callan stood aboard the Unity Spire, a massive orbital station built at the center of the newly formed Bridge Accord. Around him, Diplomats and scientists from dozens of systems worked together, a council of equals, not conquerors. Below, on the planet Serion, the old ruins of Elithar had become a sanctuary, not just for Elitharians, but for all who had lost something in the wars: humans, hybrids, synthetics, wanderers. It was not perfect, but it was possible, because someone once believed it could be. On the top deck of the spire, Lyra approached silently. "You ready?" she asked. Kalen nodded. Today was the anniversary. 20 years since Elias Navarro had lifted into the sky and stopped a weapon meant to end them both. Every year, the Accord paused operations for one day, not for mourning, for remembering, a ceremony of silence, a minute of stillness across all connected systems, and at the end, a single transmission played simultaneously through every channel. One act of mercy changed the future. Never underestimate the power of one life. Kalen stepped forward and pressed his palm to the central console. A pulse of energy lit up the walls of the station. The signal was live. He took a breath and spoke not as a king or a god or a legend, but as a son. He was never meant to be a hero. He wasn't chosen by fate. He was tired. He was angry. He was lost. And still, he chose to carry me, not because of what I was, but because he remembered what it felt like to be alone. Elias Navarro was a soldier, but he died, a father. And now, everything you see, everything we've built, exists because one man opened his door to a child who fell from the sky. The signal ended. Across planets, across moons, across outposts and colonies, people stood in silence, remembering. And in that silence, something stirred. Beyond the reach of stations and satellites, in a region of space untouched by time, a ripple moved through the void, a flicker, a glow, and then a shape, not physical, not bound to gravity or breath, a figure of light, tall, steady, calm. He walked not on surfaces, but on memory. And though no eyes could see him, no senses detect him. He watched. He listened. He waited. And above his chest, a mark pulsed softly, the same that once glowed in a small home on Callisto, the night he first bled for someone other than himself. Elias Navarro, still out there, still present, not dead, not alive, transcendent. He turned toward a distant star. A whisper passed through the dark. "It's not over." And in a flash, he was gone. Back on the Unity Spire, as the ceremony ended, Lyra stood beside Kalen and said, "There's something I've never asked you." He turned. "Why do you think he did it? Why did he save you that night?" Kalen smiled gently, not with certainty, but with faith. "Because love isn't always about knowing. Sometimes it's just about choosing." And he chose to stay, even when he didn't have to. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then I hope he knows what he left behind." Kalen looked up at the stars, eyes glowing faintly, and whispered, "He does." Elias Navarro, the soldier, the protector, the bridge between two worlds. He did not live forever, but his choice did. And across the galaxy, wherever someone chose compassion over fear, mercy over violence, hope over silence, he was there, in every act of unexpected kindness, in every life saved by a stranger. In every child held in a moment of danger, he was the quiet voice that said, "It's okay, I'm with you," and always would be.